And so, like I was saying, right, this theory that basically as population got bigger and people became in competition with each other for land and limited available resources, that we started seeing human societies begin to kind of innovate and design improvements to A, secure more food, and then B, to take over their neighbors and steal their food. And so this competition led to innovation, and one of the defining characteristics of civilizations is oftentimes aggression, and that the winners of this battle for resources would absorb the losing populations into their societies, and those losing societies would ultimately become sort of your lower class workers, right? And you see this in a lot of interesting societies where there's a clear sort of skin pigmentation difference in some of the working class, and like I'm thinking specifically in India, with kind of the untouchables or the Dalit class. But this theory is one that's frequently discussed and held by anthropologists and historians. And so let's quickly go through the earliest of the civilizations. I talked about them on the map, but let's start with Sumer. The ancient civilization of Sumer was the oldest, although we tend to call Sumer one of the Mesopotamian societies, so please know to use that term interchangeably. It was in the southern portion of Mesopotamia, that Fertile Crescent of the Tigris and Euphrates rivers, and it emerged about 5,000 to 5,500 years ago. And if you want to draw in your notes, I think this would be a really good visual for you guys to understand how dates work. But essentially, I think a lot of kids before AP World are thrown on what exactly does 3500 BCE mean? And essentially, I think that can be most easily seen on a number line, right? We are in the year 2020 CE, CE standing for the Common Era. That means we are 2020 years after what is essentially year zero, although there wasn't really a year zero. But 2020 years after, right, year zero. Anything before year zero sort of goes back negatives, like just like a number line. And so 1 year before the Common Era would be 1 BCE. 2 years before the Common Era would be 2 BCE. And so that's pretty easy to understand. But I think where people kind of sometimes get lost is why, if we are the year 2020, do people say the 21st century? Give you some think time on that. And the reason for that is because from year 1 through year 99 of the Common Era, so that was 1900 years ago, between 1 and 99 of the Common Era, that was the first century CE. So then you get to year 100 and 101, and everything from 100 to 199 was now the second century, and 200 to 299 is the third century. And so that sets us up for why the year 2020 is the 21st century. So just a little word on dates, but that puts Mesopotamian emergence at between 5,000 and 5,500 years. We know that the Sumerians in Mesopotamia concocted the first written language, which was known as cuneiform, and frequently right around the same time of what emerged in the Nile River Valley in Egypt, right? And so sometimes historians will credit Sumer with just being a little bit older, but basically, that Fertile Crescent on the other end of it was Egypt in the Nile River Valley. And so we definitely know that there was a smaller Nubian civilization to the south of ancient Egypt that was also very advanced, and a lot of historians will talk about them side by side. We see the Norte Chico civilization emerge sometime later, but that's because they were South America. And what do we know about South America and the Americas with regards to access to domesticatable animals? That's right, they didn't have them, right? Other than the llama. South America and North America didn't have domesticatable animals, and so civilization in the central coastal Peru of the Andean mountain region was a little bit delayed. Although, again, still from a historian's perspective, roughly the same time. So between 3,800 years ago and 5,000 years ago, we started to see society move in this Andean mountain region of Peru, that a simple society began to kind of evolve to the point where they were um, oftentimes argued to be the civilization. And I would say it's fair to call them the weird one because, you know, Egypt has hieroglyphics and massive building projects, and so does the Mesopotamians with ziggurats and, really elaborate religious systems like the ancient Egyptian gods and, some of the Mesopotamian gods and huge cities and all these markers of civilization. And Norte Chico had very little of it. They had smaller cities that lacked any walls, and if you don't have walls around a city, historians can pretty much guess, and archaeologists can pretty much guess that you weren't worried about somebody attacking you. So they had smaller cities. We didn't see a lot of economic specialization, a large farming class, and the other one was a priest class. They didn't have grain-based agriculture, which was different, which made surpluses harder, but they did have like some like hard squashes that could be stored for a long time, but no grain-based agriculture, which makes them different. Shang China had rice, and Mesopotamia had wheat and oats and barley. Same thing with Egypt. Indus River Valley also had wheat. And so they didn't develop certain technologies like pottery to hold grain-based agriculture. They had no writing system and little outside trade. Yet at the same time, they built this, right? And so when archaeologists excavate, a site like this, and they look and they say, "Well, shoot, that does not appear to be a simple society. In order to construct something of that scale, you would really have to be pretty advanced." This is a Norte Chico religious temple. They had a very evolved pilgrimage culture and religious culture there. Moving forward, we also started to see civilization emerged on the northwest border of India. India gets its name from the Indus River, right? Indus River Valley civilization equals India. You might want to write that in your notes. But the Indus River Valley civilization emerged, and we say it's modern day Pakistan because it was generally on the northern side of the Indus River, but that India Pakistan area. It arose between 3000 and 2000 BCE, so a little bit after Mesopotamia and Egypt, but not too far. Um, and we definitely see, similar to Mesopotamia and similar to Egypt, that cities began to take shape in this region that were pretty elaborate, no joke major cities holding tens of thousands of people with large scale building projects. And this is where you start to get into the not very sexy part of history that seems super boring, but actually is pretty monumental. They did things like standardized weights and standardized brick sizes and measurements. And why is that important? Because if you standardize what a pound is, or what an ounce is, or what a ton is, and I'm sure they obviously had different names then, but if you start to standardize that, then you can start to standardize your currency, because currency at that time would have largely been gold, right, or silver. And so, this amount of silver is worth this amount of money because we have a standard term for that amount of weight. And when you make bricks that are standard in size, then you can mass produce buildings quickly because you can lay and you don't have to fit things in as if it was a giant puzzle that you're trying to break. Now, what's interesting about the Indus River Valley civilization is they have one of the only written languages that modern linguists have yet to crack, which is a great mystery in the world. And recently we just cracked the Mayan Codex, like in the last 20 years. And it took us a long time to crack cuneiform. But we still, as advanced as we might pretend to be in archaeology or history or anything, there's mysteries. And the Indus River Valley has a very elaborate language, but we don't know what the heck they're saying. Now, one of the interesting factors of the Indus River Valley civilization, too, is different than Egypt or Mesopotamia. They had less evidence of class, right? Like they lacked the big monumental temples and building palaces that would signify people of wealth, or prestige or status. And instead, we tended to see kind of more religious styles, settings that might have given evidence, and historians think that the Indus River Valley might have been led by like a priest class, which is a different thing from like a king or an emperor, like you saw in Mesopotamia or Egypt, where the pharaoh was basically God on earth. And so we're going to learn about the caste system as it relates to India later. Um, but I think a lot of like historians, particularly specializing in India, look at this emergence of like a priestly class as the beginning of the caste system, which is a hierarchy that defined India for most of its existence. Now, what ultimately brought down the Indus River Valley civilization, and this is something that we also saw in Mesopotamia, was, um, and this is a common theme in our course, what tends to bring down empires? There's a couple different things. Sometimes it's warfare, sometimes it's disease, sometimes it's political corruption. But one of the big telling things that we oftentimes see is that human intervention, human impact on the environment is pretty huge in the collapse of civilizations too. In this case, they basically farmed the crap out of the land so much that they were irrigating at such levels in order to do it, bringing in all this water and irrigating the land that as this water evaporated, it was leaving salts behind. And they did something called salinate or salinization of the soil, which is basically slowly over many hundreds and thousands of years make your soil unusable because salts have built up to the point that nothing can grow in it. And so this is an early example of how, you know, within 1300 years, we have a full scale civilization collapse. And it was caused by basically poor maintenance of the environment, right? Poor maintenance of the environment means you can't farm, you can't eat, and things change. Um, just some pictures of early Indus River Valley like excavations. Moving forward, one of the biggest focuses of our course is the development of China. They are a huge part of AP World History curriculum from the College Board, and they really begin with the Shang civilization that emerged in the Yellow River Valley, just like all the other civilizations or most of the other civilizations emerged along river valleys a little bit later, around 2200 BCE, but still roughly around the same amount of time. And Shang China started to put in place some advancements and some constructs that stuck with China for thousands of years, which is first and foremost the dynasty system, the Shang dynasty, right? That basically ruled this highly centralized Chinese state that had an emperor who was a part of a family, and that family, their son would be the next emperor, and that was the dynastic system. And one of the beliefs that the Shang Chinese civilization originated, which stuck with China for a long time, and you also saw it in sort of in different forms, but similar in Egypt, which was this idea that the ruler of the Chinese state, the Shang Chinese civilization, was literally the son of heaven, right? Was basically a god on earth, and that this ruler kind of connected people to their gods. And this became a real common theme for early rulers who validated their rule and basically got people to follow them and listen to them by basically invoking religious justification, i.e., I rule because God wants me to, or I rule because the gods want me to, or I rule because I am the favored, son of the gods on the planet. And so this ruler had power and prestige in the minds of the people because you don't want to mess with somebody who's literally a god on earth or a son of a god or, the god's favored person. And so this person linked the Chinese people to the gods and basically the Chinese people believed that gods favored the ruler so long as that ruler was maintaining order in society. And this idea became kind of the foundation of something known as the mandate of heaven that we're going to see in the next chapter. But this idea that the Chinese people would look at the ruler and say, "We don't believe you're favored by God anymore. We think that they have abandoned you because look how crappy things have gotten. There's drought and there's war and there's disease. And if that wouldn't happen if the gods wanted you to rule. So you're out, brother, right?" And it's the next dynasty's turn. And so this civilization, the Indus River Valley civilization collapsed. Egypt, as cool as it was, collapsed, and you don't know anyone who's a modern practitioner of Egyptian religion. It's all Islam in Egypt today. Mesopotamia gave rise to some influence of, Judaic and Christian ideologies, but really China and this civilization along the Yellow River in Shang China is the strongest link to modern times of all early civilizations. And then the last one is the Olmec civilization, modern day Mexico, around 1200 BCE, had large cities with ceremonial centers, highly developed religious culture. I'm going fast because we have 20 seconds left. They created the first written language in America that ended up influencing the Mayans that we're going to come and talk about earlier or later. And you see their influence even in the Aztec, and then burn this image into your brain because this is the Olmecs in the jungles of the Yucatan.